agreed, but Congress was lied to and the bill was passed as law. In 1985, the fact that all U.S. federal tax collection has been illegal was acknowledged when a court granted a total refund to a businessman on this basis. As a letter from the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service to his regional directors says, Every tax paid into the Treasury since 1913 is due and refundable to every citizen and business. However, he advised that we will not publish or advertise this finding and you are to destroy this memorandum. Today we see the British government asset stripping in virtually every area of our society and promising great improvements in standards of living and healthcare whilst standards continue to fall, and we wonder where all of the money is going to. The answer is simple: they are not selling the nation's assets to release money for the nation's good, they are taking it to pay the national debt. And why, in a world so rich in resources, are there people dying in their millions in second and third world countries through war and starvation? Again, it is because these private companies, the banks, would rather keep these nations in debt to the tune of billions of pounds than allow them the chance of developing their own societies to a healthy level. At present, these nations need to borrow money to produce goods to sell to other nations in order to raise the money to pay back the banks at interest whilst their people starve and die. Many researchers have come to the conclusion, with which I agree, that this is a deliberate policy of the Illuminati to destroy the poorer nations through famine, disease and manipulated war in order to take total control of their lands, which are often rich in mineral wealth. The penalty for not being able to pay debts is the loss of property and land, whether through an inability to pay one's mortgage or an inability to pay one's national debt. In reality, very few people are almost entirely responsible for the vast majority of negativity and suffering in the world. It is an ingenious system which has us all at its mercy. The great God banking, together with its spin-off deities of economic growth and gross domestic product, has seen to it that the majority of the world's nations are drowning in an ocean of debt whilst the minority elite are floating on staggering amounts of wealth. It makes little secret of its origins either. The symbol of the Illuminati for the Brotherhood, the all-seeing eye which sits inside a triangle pyramid, is the symbol which adorns the U.S. dollar bill. Whilst the world is controlled by the economics of banks and whilst survival depends upon lending money at interest, there will always be rulers underruled and the need for war. This is because there will always be vastly more money in circulation than there is actual wealth to back it up, and when the borrowers run out of money to pay their lenders, they have merely two choices: to become enslaved to their debtors or to conquer them. It is for this reason that the bankers must maintain their position of ownership over the military, law, oil, pharmaceuticals, media and education, etc. In order to maintain this position of absolute power, the world's borrowers must be kept in ignorance of the truth of the situation, which is that they are little more than slaves to their lenders. True history, which is the story of billions of individuals, including their manipulation, must not be taught. Indeed, it most certainly is not. The history books are full of kings and queens, goodies and baddies, wars and conquered nations, when they should more accurately be described as the chronicles of greed and wealth. For the system to survive, it must also suppress true science, true history and the full exploration of spirituality. Steps towards a global bank. The World Bank. This lends money to finance projects in the third world to meet the needs of the multinationals. By financing projects which are totally irrelevant to the needs of the local people, the local economy is destroyed and rainforests are decimated. This conveniently adds to the environmental problem. See later. Bill Clinton nominated the current president of the World Bank, James Wolfenson, from the Schroeder Bank Population Council, Bilderberg Steering Committee, CFR and business partner of the Rothschilds. International Monetary Fund, IMF. When poor countries get into elite-engineered financial trouble, the IMF intervenes to offer more loans, thereby increasing the debt, on the condition that the elite's policies are followed, for example giving up land, which should be used to grow crops to feed the country's population, to produce luxury cash crops instead, which are exported at cut-down prices to the multinationals. Free trade agreements such as GATT, NAFTA and APEC are promoted as good things, showing close cooperation between the peoples of the world. In fact, free trade serves to make all countries reliant on global consumerism dominated by the multinationals. With no tariff on imported goods, there is no financial protection for home production, so third world countries become dependent on imported goods. Land and people in the developing world are therefore open to exploitation by global companies, and industries in the developed countries can be undermined at will. European Monetary Union. The most obvious stepping stone to a global bank and currency is the move by the European Union towards a centralized bank and single currency. Despite the apparent debate, this has already been decided upon, with the UK's supposed opt-out clause in the Maastricht Treaty being overruled by another. Also in the Maastricht Treaty are details of the control of the European currency and the reserves of each member state by 6 members of the Executive Board of the European Central Bank who, through their 8 years of guaranteed security of tenure, may not seek or take instructions from community institutions ... or any other body. Control of food. One of the more unbelievable examples of corporate exploitation of particularly the Third World is the systematic destruction of natural agricultural seeds, replacing them with patented genetically engineered ones. According to UN estimates, 75% of genetic diversity in agricultural crops has been lost this century, and in England, 1,500 unapproved seed varieties have been withdrawn. The situation now is that, instead of using native seed varieties, third world countries must pay royalties to the multinational companies for genetically engineered seeds, which have been distributed and chemically produced by the same corporations, and which are useless in a third world environment. As a result, the same people control the actual food that we can eat. -90% of all food trade is in the hands of 5 multinationals. 50% are controlled by Unilever, whose chairman, Paul Rickens, was at the heart of the formation of the Bilderberg Group, and Nestlé alone. Behind the First World War, Russian Revolution, the Second World War, the United Nations, European Union, the illusion of democracy. Part 4. Political control. Underpinning the elite's control of the political systems throughout the world is the philosophy of divide and rule. This manifests in many ways on different scales, for example the Cold War between Eastern communism and Western capitalism, managed conflicts in the oil-rich Middle East, aided by the creation of Israel after World War I, the illusion of choice in apparent democracies. To achieve this, the same organizations finance and covertly encourage sides that are portrayed as being opposites. Wars are used to abruptly change political systems, so are seldom fought for the simplistic good versus evil reasons declared publicly. Instead, they are deliberately engineered to further the progress to the new world order. After all, as decided by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, one of the tax-exempt foundations established by the Carnegie, Rockefeller and Ford families, wars are the most effective way to alter the lives of an entire people. They also make vast amounts of money for the armaments companies and the banks to lend money to governments. Such control has been going on for centuries through the Knights Templars who could make kings, the maneuvering of particular royal houses into power throughout Europe in the 15th-17th centuries, the French Revolution, the American War of Independence, etc. In this century the manipulation is demonstrable, but, because it is clandestine and apparently contradictory, the situation is very complex. However, a brief look at the events from the First World War onwards reveals the true motivation behind major events and the organizations, people behind them. Behind the First World War, Russian Revolution. In 1914 the Austrian Archduke Ferdinand, who had received death threats from Freemasons, was killed, at the second attempt, by a Serbian secret society. This was used as an excuse for Austria, backed by Germany, to declare war on Serbia, backed by Russia and France. Rasputin, the peasant mystic who gained favor and thereby actual political power in the house of Nicholas II because of his apparent ability to heal the Crown Prince Alexis' hemophilia, who effectively ran the administration in Russia, could have averted the war but was temporarily removed by an assassination attempt which occurred at almost exactly the same time as the murder in Serbia. In Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm's chancellor was Benjamin Hollweg, a cousin of the Rothschilds, and his personal banker was Max Warburg. The German news agency, Wolf, was owned by the Rothschilds, who also had a controlling interest in Hafez and Reuters, the French and British news agencies. Britain entered the war against Germany, and America did likewise in 1917, as was always planned, the ostensible reason of the sinking of the arms-carrying Lusitania, which knowingly sailed into German-patrolled waters, was merely a publicity stunt to outrage the American people and so give them the impression that they had entered the war through choice. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, which, despite its name, had manipulated America into the war, consequently telegraphed the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, requesting that he see that the war did not end too quickly. To remove Russia from the war, Germany openly supported the Russian Revolution by funding Bolshevik propaganda and safeguarding Lenin's passage through Germany. However, it was also coordinated by the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, via Kuhn, Lobo and Kohl, who funded both Trotsky and the anti-Bolshevik reaction in America. Trotsky himself was most probably a German who left the U.S. in 1917 on a passport arranged by President Wilson. Final details were arranged in a 24-man Red Cross mission to Russia in 1917, a medical mission in which only 7 were doctors, the others being leading financiers including William Boyce Thompson, head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. With the Bolsheviks successfully installed, media opposition in Britain and America was suppressed and agents dispatched to control diplomatic and intelligence reports. After the war, the treaty negotiations were held at Versailles, hosted by Baron Edmund de Rothschild. Accompanying Lloyd George was Alfred Milner, and the U.S. delegation with Wilson included Colonel House, Max and Paul Warburg, the Dulles brothers and Thomas Lamont of J.P. Morgan. The Treaty of Versailles served 3 main purposes. It spawned the League of Nations, which was the first attempt at world government drafted by House with its Genevan headquarters built with Rockefeller money. It confirmed the State of Israel, creating instability in the Middle East, and it created the financial situation to lead inevitably to a second war through which the New World Order could consolidate its position. This was achieved through setting German reparations at a level to cripple the new German Republic and by returning all economies to a gold standard which affected all the European countries who were already in serious debt to the American banks, especially to J.P. Morgan. The Second World War. Through the 1920s and 30s, loans from Wall Street financed German rearmament and the rise of Hitler. One German company which benefited substantially from these loans was IG Farben, which by 1939 had become the biggest chemical manufacturer in the world, and enabled Germany to become self-sufficient in rubber, petrol, oil and explosives. This company used the inmates of Auschwitz as slave labor at their massive chemical plant during the war and are estimated